It was a morning like any other in the quiet town of Dustfield, where the sun rose with a golden hue over the sprawling ranches and dusty trails. The air carried the scent of dry earth mingled with the faint aroma of pine from the distant hills. Birds chirped softly as they flitted between branches, their melodies harmonizing with the occasional rustle wind through the tall grass. But on this particular morning, something was amiss. At the edge of the settlement stood the Johnson Ranch, a modest yet well-kept property that stretched across acres of land dotted with cattle and crops. It was here that Mary Johnson began her day, just as she had for years, preparing breakfast for her husband, Thomas, and tending to their livestock before the sun climbed too high in the sky. Yet when Thomas woke up that morning, he found the house eerily silent. No sizzle of bacon could be heard from the stove. No hum of Mary's voice as she sang softly while working. Thomas rubbed his eyes, thinking perhaps she had gone out earlier than usual to check on the goats or fetch water from the well. He called out her name, his deep voice echoing against the wooden walls of their home. "Mary, are you out there?" Silence answered him. His heart quickened as unease crept into his chest. This wasn't like her. She was always prompt, always present. Little did he know, this moment would unravel a mystery far greater than anything he could have imagined. Meanwhile, down by the corral, one of the goats, a stubborn creature named Bessie, seemed unusually agitated. Normally content to graze lazily under the shade of an old oak tree, Bessie had instead taken upon herself to dig furiously at a patch of dirt near the fence line. Her hooves scratched relentlessly, throwing up clumps of soil as though she were searching for some hidden treasure. The sight should have been comical, but there was something unsettling about her persistence, almost as if she knew something the humans didn't. Thomas stepped outside, his boots crunching against the gravel path leading to the barn, his brow furrowed as he spotted Bessie's antics. "What's gotten into you?" he muttered, walking closer. For a brief moment, he wondered if Mary might have left something buried there, perhaps a forgotten tool or a bag of feed, but the thought dissipated quickly. Why would she leave without telling him? And why hadn't she returned by now? The day wore on, and Thomas searched everywhere. The barn, the fields, even a nearby creek where Mary sometimes washed clothes. Each place yielded nothing but disappointment. By mid-morning, word of Mary's disappearance spread throughout the small community. Neighbors gathered at the ranch, offering help and sharing theories. Some suggested she might have wandered off toward the neighboring town, maybe seeking supplies or visiting friends. Others whispered darker possibilities, that perhaps she'd fallen victim to bandits or wild animals lurking in the untamed wilderness beyond Dustfield. As the hours passed, the sun blazed overhead, casting long shadows across the parched landscape. The ranch grew quieter, save for persistent scratching of Bessie's hooves. Finally, unable to ignore the goat any longer, Thomas approached her once more. This time, he knelt beside her, examining the hole she had dug. To his surprise, it seemed deeper than he'd initially thought, revealing layers of packed earth beneath the surface. Curiosity piqued. He grabbed a shovel leaning against the fence and began digging alongside Bessie. The soil gave way easily, crumbly and loose, until suddenly his shovel struck something solid. Pausing, Thomas brushed away the remaining dirt to uncover what appeared to be a wooden box, its surface weathered and cracked with age. Carefully, he lifted it out of the ground, brushing off the debris as neighbors gathered around, their faces filled with anticipation and concern. What could this mean? Was it connected to Mary's disappearance? Inside the box lay an assortment of items wrapped in oilcloth, letters tied together with fraying string, a tarnished locket, and several photographs yellowed with time. Thomas unfolded the letters first, his hands trembling as he read the faded ink. They were dated decades earlier, addressed to someone named Eleanor, not Mary, but the handwriting bore striking similarities to hers. Could these belong to Mary's family, or were they part of a much older story waiting to be uncovered? One letter, in particular, caught his attention, written hastily. It spoke of secrets buried deep within the earth, warnings unheeded, and dangers looming on the horizon. Another described a tragedy involving a young woman who vanished under mysterious circumstances, leaving behind only whispers and unanswered questions. As Thomas pieced together a fragment of information, a chilling realization dawned on him. These weren't mere relics of the past. They were clues pointing to something far more sinister. By evening, the sky transformed into a canvas of fiery oranges and purples, the horizon glowing like molten gold. Dustfield settled into its nightly routine, the sound of crickets replacing the daytime chatter. Back at the ranch, Thomas sat alone in the dim light of a lantern, poring over the contents of the box. Beside him, Bessie rested quietly, her earlier fervor subdued now that her task was complete. But then, as if drawn by some unseen force, Thomas ventured back outside. Guided by the moonlight which bathed the landscape in silvery hues, he followed a trail marked by subtle disturbances in the ground, faint indentations that led away from the ranch and into surrounding woods. Each step took him further into the unknown, the air growing cooler and heavier with each passing minute. Somewhere deep within those shadows, he felt certain, lay answers to the riddles haunting both his present and his wife's past. Little did he know, the journey ahead would test not only his courage, but also his understanding of love, loyalty, and the lengths people go to protect the ones they hold dear. For buried beneath the surface of Dustfield's tranquil exterior lay truths so shocking, so unbelievable, that they threatened to shatter everything Thomas believed about his life and the woman he loved. Hours later, Thomas emerged from the forest, his face pale and his expression heavy with emotion. In his arms, he cradled Mary, her body limp but alive, her breath shallow yet steady. Tears streamed down his cheeks as he carried her back to the ranch, his mind racing with the revelations he had uncovered. Mary's disappearance, it turned out, was no random act of fate. Instead, it was a culmination of events stretching back generations, a legacy of secrets kept hidden, sacrifices made in silence, and choices whose consequences rippled through time. As the townsfolk gathered around, murmuring prayers and offering aid, Thomas recounted the tale he had discovered. Deep within the woods, he had found a hidden cabin, its walls adorned with photographs and artifacts belonging to Eleanor, the same Eleanor mentioned in the letters. There, locked away in a secret compartment, was a journal detailing a harrowing escape from persecution, a desperate plea for refuge, and ultimately, a vow to safeguard a child born into danger. That child, raised in secrecy, grew up to become Mary Johnson. But the story didn't end there. Buried alongside the cabin was evidence of betrayal, a second set of footprints leading away from the site, signs of struggle etched into the ground, and remnants of clothing torn apart in conflict. Someone else had known about Eleanor's hiding place, and had sought to exploit it for their own gain. Whether this person still lingered nearby, watching and waiting, remained uncertain. All Thomas knew was that Mary's return came with a price, eternal vigilance, lest history repeat itself. Under the cover of night, as stars twinkled above like sentinels guarding ancient truths, the Johnsons made a solemn pact. Together, they vowed to honor the sacrifices of those who came before them, ensuring that the secrets entrusted to their care would never fall into the wrong hands. And though peace returned to Dustfield, a lingering sense of foreboding hovered over the ranch, a reminder that some mysteries are better left undisturbed, and others must be faced head-on, no matter the cost. From that day forward, Bessie's digging became a symbol of perseverance, a testament to the power of instinct and intuition. Though she couldn't speak, her actions had unlocked doors long closed, bridging gaps between past and present, truth and fiction. And so, life continued in Dustfield, shaped by the echoes of stories untold and the courage of those willing to confront them. As the days turned into weeks, the Johnson ranch slowly returned to its usual rhythm. Thomas worked tirelessly, his hands calloused and his back aching from the labor, but his spirit unbroken. Mary, though physically recovered, carried within her a weight that no amount of rest could alleviate. The secrets they had uncovered weighed heavily on both of them, like an invisible chain binding them to a history neither had chosen but now bore responsibility for. The nights were particularly difficult. Under the vast expanse of the starlit sky, Thomas would sit on the porch, staring out the land that stretched endlessly before him. He often found himself lost in thought, replaying the events that had unfolded since Mary's disappearance. The letters, the box, the cabin in the woods. It all seemed so surreal, as if it belonged to another world entirely. Yet, here he was, living with the knowledge that their lives were intertwined in a story far older and more complex than they had ever imagined. Mary, for her part, spent much of her time indoors, tending to tasks that required little thought, but provided comfort in their familiarity. She baked bread, mended clothes, and polished the silverware until it gleamed, each action a small act of defiance against the darkness that threatened to consume her. At night, she would write in a journal she kept hidden beneath her mattress, chronicling her thoughts and fears, hoping to make sense of the chaos swirling inside her mind. But despite their efforts to regain normalcy, the ranch felt different now. The air seemed heavier, charged with an energy that neither could quite explain. It was as if the land itself was aware of the secrets buried beneath its surface, whispering warnings to anyone who dared listen. Bessie, too, seemed attuned to this shift, her behavior growing increasingly erratic. She would stare off into the distance, her ears twitching at sounds no one else could hear, or dig furiously at spots where nothing seemed to miss. Thomas often caught himself watching her, wondering if she truly understood more than any human could. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the yard, Thomas noticed something peculiar. A faint glow emanated from the direction of the corral, pulsing softly like the heartbeat of some unseen creature. Curiosity piqued. He grabbed a lantern and headed toward the source of the light. Mary, sensing his unease, followed close behind, her footsteps silent but steady. When they reached the corral, they found Bessie standing near the fence, her eyes fixed on a patch of ground that glowed faintly in the dim light. Without hesitation, Thomas retrieved his shovel and began digging, his movements deliberate yet urgent. Layer after layer of soil gave way until finally he struck something solid. Brushing away the dirt, he revealed a second wooden box, its surface smoother and less weathered than the first. Opening it carefully, Thomas discovered a collection of items unlike anything they had seen before. Among them were strange symbols etched onto pieces of stone, maps drawn with intricate detail, and a small vial containing a liquid that shimmered like liquid gold. Mary gasped as she recognized one of the symbols, a mark identical to the one carved into the side of the cabin in the woods. "This is connected," she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. "It has to be." Thomas nodded, his gaze locked on the vial. "We need to figure out what this means," he said firmly, and fast. Over the next few days, the couple pored over the new discoveries, cross-referencing the symbols with the ones they had found in the cabin. Slowly, a pattern began to emerge, a map of sorts, leading to locations scattered throughout the region. Each site appeared to hold significance, marked by specific landmarks and natural features. But why? What purpose did these places serve? Their investigation took them beyond the boundaries of the ranch, into areas rarely ventured by settlers. They explored ancient caves hidden deep within the mountains, crossed rushing rivers whose currents threatened to sweep them away, and braved dense forests where the trees seemed alive with menace. Along the way, they encountered remnants of civilizations long forgotten, pottery shards, carvings in rock, and tools crafted with skill unmatched by modern hands. With each discovery, the mystery deepened. It became clear that Eleanor, and perhaps others like her, had been part of something far greater than a simple escape from persecution. The symbols pointed to knowledge passed down through generations, guarded jealously by those entrusted with its preservation, knowledge that, if misused, could alter the course of history itself. Yet, as they drew closer to unraveling the truth, danger lurked around every corner. Shadows moved where none should tread, footsteps echoed when no one was near, and whispers carried on the wind spoke words neither could understand. Someone or something was watching them, waiting for the right moment to strike. In the heart of the wilderness, under a canopy of stars so bright they seemed almost tangible, Thomas and Mary shared a rare moment of peace. Hand in hand, they sat together, their breath visible in the crisp night air. "Do you think we'll ever find all the answers?" Mary asked softly, her voice barely audible above the rustling leaves. "I don't know," Thomas admitted honestly. "But I do know this. Whatever happens, we face it together, just like we always have." She smiled faintly, leaning her head against his shoulder. For a brief moment, the weight of the world seemed lighter, the future less daunting. But deep down, they both knew the journey was far from over. The path ahead promised challenges unlike any they had faced before, testing not only their strength and courage, but also their faith in each other and the love that bound them. And so, under the watchful eye of the eternal night, they prepared for whatever lay ahead, ready to embrace the unknown with open hearts and unwavering resolve. For in the Wild West, where the land held secrets as old as time itself, survival depended not on avoiding danger, but on confronting it head-on, armed with nothing more than hope and determination. The days that followed were a blur of activity and discovery. Thomas and Mary delved deeper into the mysteries laid before them, their every waking moment consumed by the pursuit of answers. The symbols etched onto the stones, the maps drawn with meticulous precision, and the vial of shimmering liquid all pointed to something extraordinary, something that transcended the boundaries of their understanding. Their exploration led them far from the familiar confines of the Johnson Ranch, deep into the heart of the untamed wilderness. They traversed rugged terrains where the wind howled like a living entity, carrying with it the echoes of forgotten voices. Each step took them closer to the truth, but also further into peril. One morning, as the sun cast its golden light over the land, they found themselves standing at the edge of an ancient canyon. Its walls rose steeply on either side, carved by the relentless passage of time and water. At the bottom lay a crystal-clear river, its waters reflecting the sky above in dazzling hues. It was here that the map indicated another significant location, marked by a symbol resembling a crescent moon. Thomas studied the map carefully, his brow furrowed in concentration. "This must be it," he murmured, pointing to a spot near the riverbank. "If we follow the curve of the canyon, we should find what we're looking for." Without hesitation, they descended into the canyon, their boots crunching against the loose gravel. The air grew cooler as they ventured further, the sounds of nature surrounding them, the chirping of birds, the rustling of leaves, and the gentle flow of the river, all contributing to an atmosphere both serene and foreboding. As they approached the designated area, they noticed peculiar markings etched into the rock face. These were unlike anything they had seen before, intricate patterns that seemed almost alive, pulsating faintly with a soft glow. Mary reached out hesitantly, her fingers brushing against the surface. A sudden warmth spread through her hand, causing her to gasp. "It's alive," she whispered, her voice filled with awe and trepidation. Thomas moved closer, examining the carvings more closely. "These aren't just decorations," he said, his tone serious. "They're instructions. Look here." He pointed to a sequence of symbols that appeared to form a pattern. "If we decipher this correctly, it might lead us to the next piece of the puzzle." Working together, they pieced together the meaning behind the symbols. Hours passed as they stood there, oblivious of the world around them, their focus entirely on unraveling the ancient code. Finally, with a triumphant exclamation, Thomas declared, "I think I've got it. There's a hidden chamber nearby, concealed behind these rocks." With renewed vigor, they set about clearing the debris, blocking the entrance. Their efforts paid off when a section of the rock face shifted slightly, revealing a narrow passageway leading downward. Armed with lanterns, they ventured inside, their footsteps echoing softly against the stone walls. The tunnel twisted and turned, gradually descending into the earth. The air grew colder, carrying with it a faint scent of dampness and decay. Eventually, they emerged into a vast underground chamber, its ceiling lost in shadow. In the center stood an altar, upon which rested an object encased in glass, a glowing orb that pulsed rhythmically, emitting a soft hum that resonated through the chamber. Mary approached cautiously, her eyes wide with wonder. "What is this?" she breathed, her voice barely audible. Thomas shook his head, equally mesmerized. "I don't know, but it feels powerful, like it holds the key to everything." Just then, a low rumble echoed through the chamber, causing the ground beneath their feet to tremble. Shadows flickered along the walls, taking on shapes that seemed almost human. From the darkness emerged figures cloaked in tattered robes, their faces obscured by hoods. They surrounded Thomas and Mary, their presence oppressive yet strangely calm. "You have come far," one of them spoke, their voice deep and resonant. "Few dare to seek the truths hidden within the earth. Fewer still survive the journey." Thomas stepped forward, his stance defiant despite the odds. "We seek only to understand, to protect what has been entrusted to us." The figure tilted their head slightly, as if considering his words. Then you must prove your worthiness. The path ahead will test your courage, your wisdom, and your resolve. Fail, and the secrets will remain buried forever. Succeed, and the knowledge shall be yours, but at a cost. Before Thomas could respond, the chamber began to shift. The walls slid apart, revealing a labyrinthine network of tunnels stretching endlessly into the darkness. Without another word, the cloaked figures disappeared, leaving the couple alone amidst the shifting landscape. Heart pounding, Thomas turned to Mary. Ready? She nodded firmly, gripping his hand tightly. Together, and so, they embarked on the next leg of their journey, venturing deeper into the unknown. Each twist and turn brought new challenges, forcing them to rely not only on their wits but also on the bond they shared. Along the way, they encountered trials designed to test their limits, riddles that demanded quick thinking, obstacles that required physical strength, and moments of doubt that tested their faith in each other. Through it all, they persevered, driven by the promise of uncovering the truth. And as they neared the heart of the labyrinth, they began to realize the magnitude of what they sought. Not merely answers to questions long unanswered, but a connection to a legacy that spanned centuries, binding them to a destiny neither could have foreseen. In the end, it was not just the secrets of the past they uncovered, but the strength of their own spirits, forged in the crucible of adversity and illuminated by the light of love and determination. For in the Wild West, with a line between myth and reality blurred under the endless sky, survival depended not on avoiding danger, but on embracing it, with courage, resilience, and unyielding belief in the power of the human spirit. The labyrinth stretched endlessly before them, its twisting corridors shrouded in an eerie half-light that seemed to play tricks on their eyes. Shadows danced along the walls, taking shapes that shifted between human and something far less familiar. Each step forward was met with a sense of unease, as though the very air around them carried whispers of ancient warnings. Thomas led the way, his lantern casting flickering beams of light into the darkness. Mary followed closely behind, her hand occasionally brushing against his arm for reassurance. They moved cautiously, aware that every corner they turned could reveal either salvation or peril. Their journey through the labyrinth was punctuated by trials that tested their resolve. At one point, they encountered a room filled with mirrors, each reflecting distorted versions of themselves. The reflections spoke in voices that mimicked those they loved, pleading for help or warning them to turn back. It was a test of their self-control, forcing them to distinguish reality from illusion. With trembling hands, Mary reached out to touch one of the mirrors, only to find it cold and unyielding beneath her fingertips. "It's not real," she whispered, steeling herself against the deceptive images. Further along, they faced a chamber flooded with water, the surface rippling ominously as if alive. A narrow path of stones jutted out from the wall, leading across the expanse. One misstep would mean certain doom. Thomas went first, carefully placing each foot on the slippery stones, while Mary watched with bated breath. When he reached the other side, he extended his hand to pull her across. Her heart raced as she crossed, but together they made it safely to the opposite shore. As they continued deeper into the labyrinth, the air grew heavier, charged with an energy that seemed almost electric. Finally, they arrived at a grand chamber, its ceiling soaring high above them, supported by columns adorned with intricate carvings. At the center stood a pedestal, upon which rested the glowing orb they had seen earlier. Surrounding the pedestal were inscriptions written in a language neither could decipher. "This must be it," Thomas breathed, his voice reverent. The final piece of the puzzle. Mary stepped closer, her gaze fixed on the orb. Its pulsating glow seemed to resonate with her heartbeat, filling her with a strange sense of familiarity. "Something about this feels right," she murmured, reaching out hesitantly. Before she could touch it, however, a deep rumble shook the chamber. From the shadows emerged the cloaked figures once more, their presence commanding and foreboding. This time, their numbers were greater, forming a circle around the couple. "You have proven your worthiness," the lead figure intoned, its voice echoing like thunder. "But knowledge comes at a price. Are you prepared to bear the burden of what you seek?" Thomas straightened, his resolve firm. "We are ready," he declared, his tone unwavering. "Whatever the cost, we will face it together." The figure tilted its head slightly, as if considering their answer. Then, with a wave of its hand, the orb lifted gently from the pedestal, hovering mid-air. The chamber began to glow brighter, bathing everything in a golden light that seemed to emanate from within the orb itself. "Listen carefully," the figure continued. "This artifact holds the essence of countless generations, bound together by a promise to protect the balance of the world. To wield its power is to accept responsibility, not just for yourselves, but for all who come after you." Mary felt a surge of emotion as the implication sank in. "What do we need to do?" she asked, her voice steady despite the weight of the moment. "You must choose wisely," the figure replied. "For the power of the orb can heal, but it can also destroy. Use it selfishly, and chaos will reign. Use it selflessly, and harmony may yet prevail." With those words, the orb descended slowly toward Mary, stopping just inches from her outstretched hand. She hesitated for a moment, her mind racing with possibilities. Then, with a deep breath, she closed her fingers around it, feeling its warmth seep into her skin. A surge of energy coursed through her body, filling her with visions of past and future, of lives intertwined, of sacrifices made, and of choices yet to be faced. When the vision faded, she opened her eyes to find the chamber transformed. The cloaked figures had vanished, leaving only silence in their wake. Thomas approached her cautiously, concern etched on his face. "Are you all right?" he asked softly. "I think so," she replied, her voice tinged with awe. "I saw things. So much history. So many lives connected by this single object. It's overwhelming." Together, they examined the orb more closely, marveling at its complexity. It was clear now that its purpose extended beyond mere discovery. It was a tool, a weapon, and a safeguard all rolled into one. And with it came a responsibility neither had anticipated. As they prepared to leave the chamber, the ground beneath them trembled once more. The walls began to shift, sealing off the labyrinth behind them. It was a reminder that their journey was far from over. Armed with newfound knowledge and a shared determination, they stepped out into the open air, the sun blazing brightly overhead. Back at the ranch, life resumed its normal pace, but the Johnsons were forever changed. They knew now that the secrets buried beneath the earth were not meant to remain hidden. They were meant to be protected, passed down through generations until the day when humanity was ready to embrace them fully. And so, under the watchful eye of the eternal sky, Thomas and Mary stood side by side, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. For in the Wild West, where the land held mysteries as old as time itself, survival depended not on avoiding danger, but on confronting it, with courage, wisdom, and an unshakable belief in the power of love and unity. Their story was far from over, but they faced the future with hearts full of hope and spirits undaunted by the unknown.